Much, Sean here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey here today. We are here on this Outliers Edge Roundtable with Mike Matalone, who is an incredible outlier who's built something awesome and a system that continuously grows and continuously works. And I'm really excited to dive into how he's created what most people have wanted to and what might have seemed impossible for others, and has brought it into his world right now. Mike, I'm so glad that you said yes to this conversation, and I'm looking forward to everything that comes from it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Niiamah. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're here. Mike, I didn't tell you this beforehand, but I should let you know, like the way I start off every conversation is that I would be very, I want outliers to get to know you by understanding more about you and the game you are playing. Now, this is not like pickleball or like a video game or anything like that, but like, how do you show, what's the game that you play in life and impact in business?
Uh, I would say it's the people game.
Mm, mm, mm.
Everything I do is focused around helping people grow and develop.
Tell us more. Like so, like we have a whole lot about this here. Let us know. Like, how specifically are you doing this nowadays?
Well, as you know, but your listeners probably don't. So I created a system called the XP3 Talent System. It's a people operating system.
Mhm.
So think of it as most organizations have systems for marketing, sales, production, et cetera. But the one critical piece that most organizations miss that make all their other systems work more effectively is a people operating system. That's what the XP3 Talent System is.
Nice. So let's dive in because I want to make sure that I have a history and background on people teams and like human resources. I've always believed in human capital, essentially, right? And so when I hear you talk about the XP3 talent system and like in this, I'm like, okay, how does this actually work? So I want to get into like the people side of it here. Like what is the distinction that you see when companies aren't being mindful about how they're thinking about how the people are operated?
Yeah. So I'll take you back how I came up with the idea for it.
Yeah,
Right.
please.
So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Vistage. It's one of the world's oldest, largest CEO membership organizations. I was
Yes.
a member, then became a chair, coach, facilitator for 5 years, ran three groups. So the basic premise for anyone who's not aware of the model, you get about a dozen members from all different industries, business owners come together once a month for a full day, and they bring their issues and challenges to the group. And the group's there to kind of serve as an unofficial board of advisors to help them work through the problems. So someone would present an issue, whether it's a marketing issue, sales, production, cash flow, whatever issue it is. The process then we'd ask clarifying questions to truly understand what the problem is, what that person has done to address it. And then once we get clarity around that, we give them advice, right, to move forward. So, but the question that we were taught as facilitators to ask after the clarifying was, okay, so the issue that was presented based on the feed or the answers to your questions, do you still believe that is the question, the problem we're solving, or is it something else? And in probably 60, 70% of the time, it was actually a people problem. Meaning, like, if you got cash flow problems or you got marketing problems, sales problems, it's usually because you don't have a person in charge of that division or issue or the department or problem, being presented that knows what to do to either avoid and or solve that problem. And the proof of that was you got 12 or so, 15 really smart people sitting around a table. Most of the time, in probably at least 50 or 60% of the situations, two or three of the members have already been there, done it, right? And they say, oh, let me tell you how to handle that. But even if nobody had ever dealt with that problem before, right, we always were able to come up with at least two or three possible solutions, right? And that kind of goes back to it's a people problem, not really, or it's people problem in disguise, right? As a cash flow problem or a marketing or production problem. So that was kind of the aha for me, realizing that most business problems are really people problems in disguise.
So I'm going to ask you outliers as you're listening to this right now, like what's a problem that you think right now is not a people problem? And ask yourself, if this actually was, if you could like get the benefit of all of Mike's experience and you sit down and be like, wait a minute, what's happening here? What is it on the people side of things? Because even Mike, I was hearing you, but even when you were saying like other people were coming up with, if someone hadn't already done it, they
Yep.
like collectively y'all would be able to come up with an answer. And when I heard that, it was like, oh yeah, the people problem was that they didn't have access to people who could help them think of the solution beforehand, right?
Right.
And so Atlas, I'm going to ask you to be thinking and reflecting that for yourself as we go as we continue down into this space. I love. I think that's really awesome. So you saw that you were in that experience. You're a Vistage coach and you're like a leader and you were leading these things and you saw like these people problems just kept coming up. And I had heard something that said uh, an entrepreneur that was like, "Hey, look, you might start out like doing your business for passion or whatever you like, whatever reason you think you should go into it, but eventually it all comes out to like leadership." And working with the people there, like you're gonna get back into that, and that's where like most of the problems actually like take place. So you brought up this thing about a people operating system, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, that's really cool. Can you tell us more about like what that actually means and how that actually like it like influences or impacts an organization?
Sure. Before I go into that, let me set the premise with this: that the other lesson that came out of those years running those Vistage groups was that in order to scale a company, as you're probably well aware, consistently, successfully, profitably, you need to have systems and processes for everything you do, right? It just makes it easier to onboard new employees, to onboard clients, to deliver your services or products. The more systematized, the easier things get, right?
Mhm.
So with that, I started looking around then and saying, all right, well, what kind of people systems are out there? And as you know, there's a lot of hiring systems, there's a lot of training systems, and there's even a lot of management type of systems that are out there. But the problem I recognized is that they worked in isolation of each other. And if you think about the silo mentality, like even just departments operating in silo, sales has no idea what production's doing and vice versa. And that's where, you have a lot of your challenges. And then your team is not working collaboratively together. So with that understanding that you got to have systems, right? But the key to it is that they have to be integrated. When I created the XP3 Talent System, it was done in that purpose. So, for example, the XP3 Talent System has three components, which is part of the three in our name, right? And by the way, everything we do is in threes, and that's the science foundation of the science behind it, because the average human being can learn, retain, and apply three things easily. When you go above that, it gets much more difficult to do, right?
Really quickly here, outliers. You saw that learn, retain, and apply, right? Like he's someone who lives by what he says. Go ahead, Mike.
So anyway, so talent acquisition is the first component. You got to hire people, right? Talent, we call talent acceleration, is the second component, which is about taking your new hires and not training them for the job you hired them for, but transforming them into passionate, collaborative company advocates, right? That's what your onboarding training needs to focus on, because then everything else about learning the job that you hired them for becomes so much easier. And then the third component is talent retention. You want to protect your investment and all the time that you spent hiring and onboarding, training these people, and you want them to stick around and continually to improve and get better, right? But when those three elements work in isolation of each other, you're going to run into walls all the time. So some examples what I'm talking about. When you're hiring, most people are just thinking about, oh, I got this role I need to fill. I need to find somebody, and of course I want the best person I could possibly find. But the mistake that people don't think about is, yeah, you're identifying the good qualities that they bring to the table, but you also have to recognize and identify what I like to call gaps as opposed to weaknesses, right? And then how big are those gaps against the requirements that you're looking for, which goes back to you need to get clear on what are you looking for before you start looking, right? That's a whole nother discussion. But once you've got that clarity, it's easy to identify where they're strong and where those gaps are, and even how big the gaps are. But then you're thinking about, well, if I hire this person, then if I can focus their initial onboarding training to close those gaps, they're going to become productive a lot faster, and therefore so will my organization. So you need to think about training and development while you're hiring. And you need another thing that people don't do is you need to think about retention, right? Most people leave. In fact, over 33% of all employees leave in the first 90 days. The number one reason is the I don't knows. I didn't know I had to do this. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know you weren't going to give me the tools and resources that I had in my previous job that made me that A player. So just because they're an A player there doesn't mean they're going to be an A player here, right? So the retention piece, and also recognizing that is one of the number one reasons people leave jobs is they don't believe there's a future, a career for them there. Which means when you're hiring, you need to be able to present a clear career path for your employees that say, hey, we have well-defined career paths that are going to take you from where you are to the next role, right? And by the way, those should be done in 90-day sprints, threes, because most employees can't think out a year or two later. The old, hey, do a great job, and then we'll talk about what's next. And then sometimes that conversation never happens. But if you say, hey, you're going to start at this level, at this role, and then in the next 3 months, you're going to work towards this next level, right? And then when you achieve that, you can go to the next level and so on. So, but that you have to integrate all three pieces, and you have to focus on all three at each of those components at each level.
I love this, Mike. Before we came on, I was talking to Mike, and I was like, tell me about like a counterintuitive thing that you would love for outliers to get into. And he was like, it's like when I get into like the talent system, man, like there's a lot of these things that came up, and I'm already hearing it, like the element. So I can see behind you have hire, train, retain behind you, right? But what was really cool was when like when you were going through when you're going through each of the different components, you got to the train element of it all, and like rather than just like you took a left turn. You took it wasn't just you're like yes, like there's training involved, but like what we're really doing is transforming them like as quickly as possible into the I had spent my time in culture, and I ultimately started looking at culture of an organization as the rules that the organization plays by, how to get points, like what gets rewarded, so on and so forth. So I think of culture as a game. So like you're transforming them into the players that could be successful, be all-stars at this organization within like through that onboarding process. It's like if they're that person, then the training becomes so much more like seamless, or so much more like cohesive overall. So that's like one element that I saw where I was like, oh, that's not. I hadn't heard that perspective being said before, and I wondered hey, how did that come to you? Like, and where like what do you see being a difference between people who like focus on that training element versus on that transformation element?
Ask the question again a little differently. I want to make
Yeah,
sure I'm answering.
definitely. That the specifics here is you made a distinction between training and transforming, and I want to know. Ultimately, I want to know why is that distinction so important.
Got it. Okay. Yep. Very clear. So you're familiar with the Gallup organization, right?
Absolutely.
Gallup, all the Gallup polls. If you're not aware, they're also a management consulting firm to like Fortune 100 companies, but they produce a lot of good material. So every couple of years, they do a state of the employee workplace study. It's usually on 50,000 companies around the world, all different sizes and shapes and industries. In fact, I just got an email yesterday. I think they just came out with the latest one. But in there, they discovered that employee engagement is the key to success, right? But most people don't truly understand what engagement is. So even in Gallup stuff and all the stuff I read, they'll give you a book full of definitions. We boiled it down to it's a psychological connection between your employees and the organization, and in two areas in the organization. Number one, what you just talked about, the culture, right? So, and your culture is grounded, as you know, in your mission, your vision, and your core values. That's the basis for culture and what helps define what that culture is. So the core values, how do we operate? The mission, why do we come to work every day? The vision, what are we trying to accomplish long term? Well, if you think about it from an owner, right? It's your mission, your vision, your values. So you are psychologically connected to those, right? And therefore you are willing to do whatever it takes in order for that organization to achieve its mission and vision, right? But how do you get your employees to do the same, right? How do you get them to have that psychological connection? Well, take it a little further. Gallup has defined that or not defined, but discovered through this research, the average employee only operates at about 40 to 60% of what they're capable of operating at, which means they have another 40 to 60% that they choose whether or not they're going to put that in. Well, in the example I just gave, as the owner, you choose to put it in and do whatever it takes. It's your mission, your vision, and you operate by those values, right? So you have a psychological connection. Well, if you focus when you're hiring on your mission, vision, values, your culture, make that as equally as important as the skills and behaviors you're looking for, right? And find people who are in alignment with that, they too can become psychologically engaged at that level. But it's not just going to happen by telling them once, right? So then again, you talk about it in hiring to identify it and letting them know it's that important. But then that first couple of days of onboarding training, the first thing that should be focused on and spent at least an hour is your mission, vision, and values and why those are so important and how they actually play out day to day. So second piece of the psychological connection is a psychological connection to the actual behaviors of the work they're doing. And this is where more of the science comes in. So for example, I'll ask you this, Niiamah, are you a naturally detailed oriented thinker?
The answer is no.
Yes.
I am, listen, I can get into the weeds for sure,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
I am a much bigger picture. I like to start with bigger picture and then eventually we'll get down.
Yep, yep, and I'm the same way. And most entrepreneurs are that way. We're more strategic in our thinking, which is kind of what gets us into wanting to start a company and run it. Right? You got to look at that big picture, right? But we learn to do the details in our
Yes.
business, right? And we can become really, really good at it. Well, there's a big difference between being good at something and enjoying doing something.
Mm.
Right? So, and that's another mistake that people make when they're hiring. They usually only focus on, can you do this? As opposed to also focusing, do you want to do this? Right?
Yeah.
So for example, right, let's take a project manager, right? 60, 70% of an average day for a project manager is taking care of all the details, right?
Yeah.
You can teach somebody how to do that skill, right? But what you can't teach is them to enjoy spending that time in the weeds that much every day. Right. So for me, you as an entrepreneur, there are days I won't do any detail work. There are days where maybe it's an hour or so. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's no big deal. But if you were interviewing me for a job and said, hey, Mike, 60, 70% of your average day is going to be spent in the weeds with the details. Can you do it? Sure, I can do it. Am I going to do it consistently? Not at all, because I don't enjoy doing that much. So it depends.
And when I hear that, it's like, not only is it like not like inconsistent, but it's also like this component of like you're going to get what I give you. And like, if you said 60, 70, I'll give you the 60 because that was what I agreed to. But like, you're not going to get 80, 90 or whatever it is. You're not going to get that extra discretionary like effort as well.
Exactly. So when you know that attention to detail is a big behavioral component of the job, you not only need to hire someone who has the skill set that knows how to do the details, you need to also make sure they're wired, their personality traits, that they are a detailed thinker, and therefore they will love coming to work doing that every day. And that then they now have a psychological connection to the actual behavioral attributes of the job that they're doing. So that's when I said, when you need it, what engagement is a psychological connection to the organization, the culture, the mission, vision, values, and a psychological connection to the actual behaviors of the work. And when you do that, that is what employee engagement is. And it is the secret sauce to tapping into discretionary effort, to getting your employees to be willing to do whatever it takes to succeed.
So as you're talking here, Mike, like I'm recognizing from I'm like, oh, I'm someone who's like, not only has drank the Kool-Aid on this, but like I own like a Kool-Aid stand, I'm like, Mike is on. And at the same time, I want to look at this here and I'm like as you said, I'm like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know the right question to ask on behalf of this, but I want to go to the person who like didn't know that any of this was the case, right? The person who doesn't like start thinking about people first, or like or the talent systems first, or like sees this integrated here, right? What's the number one challenge or pushback that you get from other leaders who are going through the system or thinking about going through the system, like that you get? Like, so what's like the belief that they hold that keeps them from trying to even implement this on their own beforehand?
Well, there's probably not one. There's probably a couple of things that come to
Yeah,
mind to answer that. Number one is just the mindset that people have about employees, right?
yeah,
So like most people I talk to got the attitude, being a manager would be great if it wasn't for all those damn people knocking on my door bothering me all day. Right. And
yeah,
and if you look at people as a nuisance, a bother, right, then you're already at a roadblock you're not going to get past. You have to recognize that to grow an organization, right? And I'm not talking about you building a job for yourself. I'm a plumber and I'm going to build a plumbing business, but that means I'm the guy out there going and fixing all the plumbing problems every day. You didn't build a company, you built a job for yourself, right? And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you want to build an organization, right, you must recognize that the ceiling of your business is dictated by the capabilities of your people, because there's only so much you can physically do in a day. But when you build a high performing team around yourself, it's endless what you can accomplish, right? And again, and if you can tap into this discretionary effort, and this goes back to the Gallup studies, companies are doubling, tripling, quadrupling their productivity without even adding a single other person to the team, by just being able to understand this concept around discretionary effort and how to create that engagement through this process. And that's what the XP3 Talent System it was built for, and exactly how it's designed to help companies learn and implement this in just 90 days, 3 months. Um, and again, you're not going to be an expert at it, but you can put the foundations and see measurable results in that first 90 days. And then from there, you just get better and better.
So I'm going to ask this other question here that's coming to mind, where I'm thinking about any outlier out there that's running an organization like this and is thinking about this, but and it's like, all right, Mike, I'm on board with you. I feel you. I see where you're coming from, and we could use this, right? We're also at a time right now where AI is coming up, right? And so there's a lot of questions about people or AI, people or agents, And so I'm really curious about like your thoughts on this, how like the talent system works with it. Like, just really curious about like how you navigate this, or you help your clients navigate this as they're thinking about both of these two things at the same time.
Right. Yeah, and right, that's the big topic today, right?
Yeah,
Will AI replace people?
yeah,
um, some jobs, possibly, or definitely, but not all jobs. And you have to
yeah,
understand the human element that we bring to the table. I don't think AI will ever be able to replace some of those pieces. So, a specific example, right? When you're hiring, there's a lot. Every day I get emails about new AI recruiting tools and stuff. And we're actually talking with a company now that's a big recruiting firm that we're looking to partner with, and they have a total AI solution. But what I've learned, they're not really a true recruiting company. What they're doing is
mm,
using AI to do the hard part of recruiting, and not really the hard part, but the time consuming part, which is fill in that candidate pipeline. Get me
mm,
enough candidates that I can actually go through to assess and find the one that's the right one for us. So, you know, in the past, doing that manually, is the big time suck for a recruiter. It can take you got to like just to fill one role effectively in like about a 30 to 45-day span, which is what normal, the average to fill a good role. You got to put in about probably 3 to 4 hours a day, 5 days a week,
mm,
in order to just fill the pipeline and then screen these people. So yes, AI can actually do that now more effectively and efficiently than a person. But when it gets to the point where you got to engage with that person, right? And some of these companies are even using AI for that. But it's like you lose that personal touch, that element. So, what I was talking about, tapping into that discretionary effort,
yeah,
well, in order to do that in the recruiting process, I have to get you extremely excited about this opportunity to join our team. And
mm,
AI can only do so much of that because they're not going to be able to have a conversation with somebody and pick up on those signals from things you say or watch your reactions to things I say so that I could change, how I'm approaching or saying stuff to get you excited. And then even going through the interview process, I've seen even total AI solutions that, oh, you don't even have to interview them. AI will do it for you, right? But you miss so much of the human element, and that's so critical in the puzzle when you're just letting it all go to AI. So
Oh yeah.
I think AI has a good place in capturing certain elements of doing jobs, but I think a lot of jobs still need that human touch to be truly effective. So call it a tech-enabled human element, right? That'll work for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I feel like I needed to ask this question because what I know outliers out there, they're on the cutting edge of things, right? And I'm like, everything you're saying like that's really fits in. I'm like, if I don't think I'd be doing you a service if I didn't give you a chance to like speak to this if it was like hanging out in the people's back of their minds. So I'm glad that you brought this in. So, Mike, let's do this here. 'Cause I'm about to change gears a bit here. I want to like we've been talking about the talent system in a bit, and now I want to get to you as a founder and you as someone who's been growing something. So, for any outlier that's listening to this that either wants to go and bring a talent system into an integrated talent system and people operating system into their organization, or knows someone who like would really benefit from this, who is struggling inside of their organization and has a problem that they think is a cash flow problem or a marketing problem and XYZ, and it ends up like when you boil it down, it's really a people problem. What's the best way for them to move forward with you?
Yep. Reach out to me. You can send me a direct email at mike@xp3talent.com. So that's the number three. You could go to our website and sign up for a demo. We will give a 30-day free demo of our system too to let people try it out. But even just our talent mastery program, it's like I said, it's a 90-day program, but we're so confident in its abilities to create results in 90 days that we give 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't see measurable results in 90 days, we give you 100% refund of your money. And of course, we haven't had to do that ever. So we're that confident the system will work. But that's probably the best way. Just email me directly or go to our website, xp3talent.com, to learn more.
That last bit with your guarantee there makes me like what I get about you, Mike, is that you play at a level of excellence, which feels really nice. I think that's one of the cool parts about being in this space here. Where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm talking to people who like not they know how to create something that they can stand by. So much of you're like I'll dangle this in front of you, like that's fine. Like we'll remove the risk, but the real risk is that you're working with us. Like that's like that's it. Once what I get the sense of is like once people choose to work with you, it's like it's handled. We're good.
Yeah.
Things are taken care of.
If I can give another shameless plug here,
Yeah, please.
the other way is get a copy of my book, Hire, Train, Retain.
Yeah.
That because everything that we do is recorded in there and how it works. But one of the things I wanted to point out is the forward was written by a friend of mine, a guy named Brian Gottlieb, who'd be a great guest on your podcast.
Yeah.
Brian built several companies and then just sold them for 150 million a couple of years ago. So I reached out to Brian and said, "Hey, Brian, would you read my book, the manuscript, and write the forward for it?" And he says, "Well, let me read it, and then before I commit." And then, of course, he read it and he said, "Definitely." And in the forward, the first top thing in there he says, 5 years and $500,000. Right? That's how he heads the forward. He says, "Yep, that's my best estimate of the time and money I could have saved if I had this book in my hand 12 years ago." Right. So that's probably the best endorsement I could have gotten because Brian built some amazing companies. So to hear that from him was just very humbling. So.
Well, I love that. I love that here. Outliers, we know where to go. We are a community of people who bring things to life. So if there's anyone that that should be in Mike's world or that would really benefit from the XP3 talent system or like looking at their people operations, like give them a call. All right, but let make sure they know about this episode. Share this with them so that they get a chance to get in and get their hands on the book and beyond. All right. So, Mike, now I want to talk about you here for the next like 15 minutes or so. And like what I'm curious about in particular is I see what you've built and I see your expertise in what you have done. Right. I want to get into like the edge of this all for you. Right. So right now things have been. How long have you had XP3 Talent System?
Well, I started creating it probably
Mm.
16, 17 years ago,
Yeah.
but we officially didn't launch it till about 7 years ago. So,
Nice, nice, nice. So like, so there's you've had a lot of like experience with this here. You've had a lot of time for it to go through. Like, I'm curious here. Like, what was one of like the biggest challenges of bringing this thing to life for you? And let's start with that. I'll ask that question first. What was one of the biggest challenges of bringing this out to life?
simplification.
Mm,
That there's so much to it. It was, for years, up until the last couple of years, it was just very, um, I'll say complicated, right? Because there's so many pieces to it. So that was the biggest challenge we had to overcome is how do we simplify this thing? And give you just a quick example, even just, 2 years ago, it took us a year to implement the program in an organization, right? Uh,
mm,
Now, based on what we've learned how to simplify the learning curve by, and I'll go to, using technology to help automate some of the different things.
yeah.
That's how we're able to now get it implemented just in 90 days and see measurable results. So that was probably the biggest hurdle that we had to overcome is just how to
Let's talk a
keep
little
it
bit
simple.
about Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because I think that like this, like I can see that outliers run into this over and over again, like myself included, right? We become
Yep.
experts at something. Like it's so funny. It's like at first you know nothing, and then like you're like you know enough to be like there's something here, and then you become
Yep.
an expert at it, like so that you can go and actually sell and make like handle all the different problems and all the different iterations of it, and then you like sometimes I say I'm like I know too much. Like it's like that. Like if only I knew less, this whole thing could be a lot easier. So, like, take us through a little bit here. Like, what are some of the things that you found? Maybe let's just like either one or three, one of those two, thing that you found to actually help you with through the process of simplification. Because I think that is, yeah. Let me not elaborate on it. I'm going to try and actually practice my own process of simplification here. So, to let us know what are three things that you found to actually help you accomplish simplification.
Hmm. So again, there's so many. I'm
Yeah.
trying to just think of one to just to kind of keep
I
it.
I I appreciate you taking the time on it. Like so, like one of the things I'm seeing
Yeah.
right now, like as you're thinking through it, it's like outliers. Look like the process of actually spending the time to digest and like distill. Like I can see you doing that right now. Like rather than
Mhm.
just like blurting out certain things here, you're like, let me actually distill it down to what the actual core of it is. So like I can see it in action.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But so, and I'll give credit back to an early coach mentor of mine where he said, Mike, you got to learn to pause. He said,
Mm,
seek first to understand before being understood. But he said, to do that, you have to pause between what stimulates you and your response. All right. And
mm,
be okay with that pause and, be comfortable in that space because that's where the real truth usually comes out and the solution. So
mm,
that was probably an aha moment. In fact, and then for years I had that, on my wall or everywhere on my computer. So, seek first, pause, but but before reacting. So that alone has helped me, and it helped me to pause and think about how we were presenting stuff, how we were teaching it, and go to the technology. So, we probably have I think now there's 17 topics that we teach over the 90 days. And in the past, we were trying to teach them all through live training sessions, right?
mm,
So then last year, embracing technology, we built a learning management system that now figuring out that if we pause and take the key components, what used to take me an hour to present, I can present in a 5 or 10 minute video, right? So that was an aha there, and that's one of the ways we were able to condense that down. But again, focusing on even though there's 17 topics, there are three objectives that we focus on in each one of them, as opposed to in the
mm.
past, there might have been 10 objectives we were trying to get through. But it's hard enough for people to just get their head around the three, right? So we've really
Wow.
focused on how do we get them to learn, retain, and apply those three most important elements for each piece of the system.
Nice, nice. There's as I say this, like outliers, like think about this for yourself here, right? Because I'm hearing a couple of things that are coming in. One is the pause. So you're taking you've actually before we even get to the pause, one of them is like the accumulation of experience, right? Like
Yes.
you had it for 16 years, 7 years in business in particular, and you had years and years and years of actual experience, and like and in a way where you're like you have something that's working and you can implement it in a year and it would work and so on and so forth. That's the first thing, the accumulative experience. The second thing that I was hearing was the pause, right? To be able to sit down and like reflect, and rather than just like continuously trying to make something, it's like we need to actually take some time to like distill and see what's here and see what's important and see what actually moves the needle and so forth, right?
Yep.
The third thing I heard here is that you gave yourself a framework. You gave yourself some constraints. We've been saying focus, but I'm also hearing constraints in here. You're like, we get three. Like that's it, three. So there may be 10, there might be 17, but we get three.
Yeah.
And I think that like in that constraint, part of what I'm hearing is like there's like an 80-20 going on, right? The Pareto's principle here, where it's like 20% of what we're doing, like what we share, is actually will lead to 80% of the results. And if we can do that and stack that on across the different modules and get them to like uh, the place where they can learn, apply, and retain.
Yep.
I'm trying to make sure I have your three, right? I'm in the practice of the three, seeing how it comes out. All right. But we can get that across the way. We will be able to get them. It's better to get them 100% on 80% of the way and get it done in 90 days than to get them to whatever, 60% on 100% in a year. Let me
Yep.
check in so far and see, does that feel like it's tracking?
Yeah. Exactly. It even makes me think of a specific example, right? So
Yeah,
the
please.
first time I applied the XP3 Talent System to an organization, I had met with this company in June of 2016. They had over 80% turnover, right?
Mm.
They literally hired like 230 people from January to June and lost like 170 of them, right? Yeah. So, but costing them millions, right? So they said, they asked, could I fix it? And I said, yeah, we're going to implement this system. I'm going to train all your people on it, and then you'll see the results. So, um, the so you understand some context. The company is a residential window replacement contractor, and now they're one of the largest in the U.S. But they were still decent sized back then. But anyway, they teach their sales reps a 10-step sales process that they use to close in one visit. And the company was averaging like a 57% average close ratio between like 130 sales reps they had, where most people in the industry are lucky to average, 20, 25% close ratio.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they were already really, really good at that sales pitch. So they would put their people through a 2-week, 10-day sales training program to teach them that process, but also everything about the product knowledge, right? So those 10 days were completely focused on that. So when I said, oh, well, I'm going to show you how to get better results and eliminate that turnover, and then I started explaining what we're going to do. They're like, well, so what? Now we got to make it a 3-week, 4-week training program. And I said, no, actually, we're going to shorten the training program. So actually, I'm going to take 2 of the 10 days to teach how to create engagement and tap into that discretionary effort, which is going to make the remaining 8 days way more effective than you've ever had in the past. So that's really what we did. So it's kind of how do you do more with less as opposed to adding on. It's how do you do it better, right? And just so you know that they would run about 4 of these classes a year. They were lucky to graduate maybe 50% of a class that they put together, right? Well, from the very first one that we did after training their team on the system, we actually hired 18 sales reps, graduated 17 or 94% or 95% of the class. But the real proof in the pudding was week 3, they go back to their respective offices and start running sales leads. Well, those 17 reps sold $1.5 million in windows in the first 4 weeks in the field, first 6 weeks on the job, right?
Nice.
Which never done anything like. We usually took them 6 months to get to that level. And a year later, we still had 16 um, of those 17 reps were still with the company, right? So
Mhm.
that was kind of an aha. But when I first implemented it, I wasn't even really conscious of the how part, right? I was just kind of doing it.
Yep.
So pause factor was, let me look back and what did we do differently? And it wasn't until I reflected that I realized we were doing less with more, right? To get those actual results as opposed to adding on, a whole lot more time and effort. So
Oh, Mike, I'm loving this. Like I look down, I'm like, oh, we're at the end of our time here. But I that last bit, I really want to make sure I call out for outliers here, right? Because I said earlier, like I was going to start off with the pause, and I said no. First is the experience beforehand, right? And I think that there's something really in what you just said, Mike, that is uh, it's a bit of a trap. I feel, especially for us as high performers out in the world that are used to like that have gotten to a place where we're used to having success, or and used to being associated with success, whatever that happens to be inside of our arena. I think it's one of the number one things that keeps outliers from hitting higher and higher levels, right? Which is um like the element of it being like, oh, I should know how this goes beforehand, and it should be organized. And this is like, I know I left a large, one of the top consultant firms on the planet, and I went to my own business. I'm like, I need to have decks upon decks that show all the like SOPs and all this. It's like, it's not needed at this place here. What's needed is to actually go and get the work done. And then once you get the work done, then you can pause and learn from what has happened, what went right, what went bad. Like just do the retrospectives, and now how we're going to do it again later on. I think that there's like, as you're talking about this, I realized that like there's a big trap that right now I feel like I've found myself in it a long time for a bit, where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do anything until I know I can figure out the whole system in advance. It's like, no, 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 this was actually done. And then the system came out and said, how do we do this so that we're not just making it up and make go with the flow? Like, how do we have been able to get ahead of this thing that got done?
exactly.
Oh, okay. Now let me go implement it. Can I acknowledge you for one more thing, and then we're going to wrap for today. The thing I want to acknowledge you for, and like, is that you took a business that was working, and then you came up with something that was rather like remarkable, right? Which said, how can we get people accelerate the results by 4x instead of it taking a year, 12 months? We're going to get it done in 3, right?
Yep.
Like, to like that's not something that people think about often. It's not something that people come on it and do. They're like, how do I make these incremental adjustments? You decrease the time by 300%, 400%, whatever, like however the math works when you go down. It's different when you divide and when you multiply. But I want to really acknowledge you in that there, because I think that like to take something that was working again as an out, like you already have an outlier results, and to say like, I'm going to take that to a new level, and by that we're going to compress the time frame to get you that results even faster. Like, that's not something that is, it's not like you carved off 2 or 3 months. Like you took it to a quarter of the time, you know, and you
Right.
can still stand strongly behind a 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Like,
Mhm.
I just want to make sure I'm acknowledging you on that, because you decided to take something that was working and you risked it for something that could be even better. You did not let good just be enough for you. I really want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah, yeah.
you.
Well, Mike, we're going to wrap up our conversation here. The way that I like to do this is with 2 questions. The first one is just, can you let any outlier remind us again how, if we want to go deeper down the journey with you, how we can go ahead and do that?
Yep. Email me directly at mike@xp3talent.com. You can also go to our website, xp3talent.com, and learn lots more and contact me through that. The other one I would recommend is, if what I've said intrigues you and you want to learn more, get a copy of the book, Hire, Train, Retain. You can get it on Amazon, because everything I've shared and lots more is in the book, but it's also a small read, right? It's only a couple hundred pages, going with the concept I learned is that, a lot of people think when they write books they got to put everything in there, and my first book was kind of like that, and the second edition was stripping out all that stuff. It's just like,
Yeah,
leave the fluff out, just the meat, what people need to capture the most important lessons and apply those.
I
So
love it. I love it. Mike, last question for you here. So, like, let's say outliers are handled right now, right? They know how to reach you. They've seen new things about their business and all that, right? Every time I have a conversation, and the reason I do this is to make sure that we like have a life changing conversation, something that actually elevates and makes your day or your weeks better than it would have been had you not been here. So, what is one thing that what's an insight that you're leaving this conversation with? What's a takeaway that you're having? I'm thinking about your Vistage days. So, like, I know that you know about like things actually lead into to insight. What's something that you're taking away from this conversation for yourself?
Um, what's that? Just a reminder and I need this constant reminder to pause all the time,
Mhm.
to really, think things through, right?
Mhm.
And people a lot of times think, and so I appreciate you pointing that out earlier that I was doing that. But people sometimes think, oh, this person doesn't know the answers, or they're slow because they're pausing and thinking. But that's actually a good thing. And in practicality, I had a client last summer who they were making a hire, and the candidate said, "Yeah, let me go home and think about it, talk to my wife about it, and I'll get back to you tomorrow." And they rescinded the offer for the guy because he didn't accept their offer immediately,
Mm.
and it hurt their ego. And I was like, you want people to think about it. That's a good sign. So, but yeah, so that just probably talking about this has helped me to really remember that I got to pause even more than I'm doing now.
It
So
I see you in the practice of it, and I appreciate it. I really did. There's an element of me being like, "Yep," like what's going to come out of his mouth next is going to be like the most like distilled version, and I heard someone say value per second. You know, like this high value per second, and I appreciate that quite a bit.
thank
All right, outliers. We're in it right here. Like, I want you to go and take your insights. Let us know in the comments. Let us know. Like, reach out to us. You can come join us in the Outliers at School group, which is school.com/outlier. Let us know some of your insights, your takeaways, and we can continue to build out from there. Until the next time, we all talk. Then.